his experience ranges from mergers and acquisitions, capital and private equity, and he advises clients on selling or acquiring companies, and was a recipient of the Top 40 Under 40 Award, and of course, the Telfer Executive MBA grad as well. So here to walk us through some thoughts and some insights into building wealth through enterprise. Proud to present to you, Stephan.
Hey, Claudia. So you're probably thinking, am I watching Justin Trudeau on the noon hour briefing? No. So I'd like to take some time at the end for a Q&A. So my presentation isn't that long, but hopefully we get some questions after that we can go through. So let's get started. So building great wealth as an employee is almost impossible. But what if being an entrepreneur isn't for you? What if there was a hybrid model? I like to call this concept corporate entrepreneurship. I've worked with many entrepreneurs, and I now know that I'm not one of them. I have many of their traits, but I'm missing one big one: their inability to see risk. Everything is upside, no downside. They have what's called optimist bias. However, there's just as much risk being an employee as being an entrepreneur running a business. You can easily be fired or laid off. The perception of less risk as an employee is an illusion. As humans, we have many cognitive biases. We are fooled all the time, and we don't even know it. What if we were aware of these biases and we can use them to our advantage? So how can we create our own illusion of low risk, but get some of the upside? We just need to fool ourselves. So today, I want to share my experience with you and how I've used this concept in my career. So I've applied the corporate entrepreneur strategy throughout my career. I don't have time to cover them all, but I can speak to my current position as managing director of Welch Capital Partners. I started my career in government, and while I was there, I took upon myself to start a green initiative, which was eventually franchised and rolled across multiple federal departments. However, what I realized was that I had created extra work for myself, but I had none of the benefits of upside. Sure, I was provided with bonuses and I received rewards, but I didn't financially benefit. So I concluded that a government career wasn't for me. It was from there that I decided to start my corporate entrepreneur journey. So skipping ahead to today, I'll recall how I became managing director of Welch Capital Partners. So by way of background, Welch is an accounting firm here based in Ottawa. It's been in business for over 100 years. And in 2014, Welch was looking for somebody to launch their corporate finance division. They had one failed attempt already, so they were reluctant to invest again into somebody new. Perfect, opportunity identified. I was currently working at a family office, and Welch happened to be my auditors. Having had already a few career moves in corporate entrepreneurship, I wasn't looking for a job. So I made them an offer. Pay me less in a base salary, way below market, but in return, I'll take equity in the new group and a performance bonus structure. I could have ventured out on my own, but I would have had all the risk. No dental plan, no HR division, IT department, boardrooms, free coffee and snacks. I'd have had all the risk if it didn't work out. So rather, we leveraged Welch's name, reputation, and seed money. And I got started building a new group now called Welch Capital Partners. In only a few years, we've become the largest group in the region, and we're highly recognized in our field. Corporate entrepreneurship has many advantages. Some of them are speed. Setting up an organization is much easier in a large one. Capital. Leveraging internal resource allows you to scale quickly. Brand recognition. When I told prospective clients that we were part of Welch, they instantly trusted us. Salesforce. We had over 350 sales people pushing work towards us. However, there are some disadvantages. Being a small business unit within a big organization can be hard to get anyone's attention. Job security. If you fail, you'll be the only one to blame. And bureaucracy can be a lot for a small company trying to move fast. However, Done right, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. So how do we become a corporate entrepreneur? Step one, ask yourself, what are you passionate about? Next, what does my organization need? This could be setting up a new division, or maybe volunteering to open up a new office in another geography, or creating a new product for the company. The ideal situation must check both these boxes. If you're working hard to fulfill a need, but you hate the work, you will just end up resenting the company and starting over. Therefore, look for ways to combine your skills with the problem someone else is trying to solve and offer them a solution. Step two, if you want upside, you need to accept some of the downside. 9 times out of 10, if you offer somebody to pay you based on a performance, they'll take you up on that offer. This is a zero risk bias, a preference for reducing small risk to zero. If you've ever wondered lately why celebrities are so wealthy, it's because they've gotten smart about how they negotiate their contracts. As an example, Alex Guinness was offered the role of Obi-Wan Kenobi. He hated the entire concept of Star Wars, referring it to a fairy tale rubbish. Nonetheless, Alec agreed to do the movie, but on one very unique request at the time. He would only sign if he was given a percentage of the film's gross revenues, rather than being paid a flat fee. His estate has earned more than $95 million from that simple change. Therefore, suggest that you get equity in the new group. In Canada, our tax regime rewards entrepreneurship. $1 million bonus as an employee in Ontario is taxed about 50%. But selling your shares in a company worth $1 million would result in about $26,000 in taxes. That's $470,000 more. Why? That's because every Canadian has what's called a lifetime capital gains exemption that shields their tax up to about $850,000. So think like an entrepreneur, not an employee. This means no 9-to-5 mentality. Look for opportunities. With a safety net that most pure entrepreneurs don't have, dream and think big. Leverage another bias, the Peltzman effect, the tendency to take greater risk when perceived safety increases. Sure, you may only have a small piece of the pie, and if you decide to completely venture out on your own, you may have made more money. However, with any good hedge, you limit downside, but conversely, it limits upside as well. So hopefully I've inspired some of you to think differently about your current situation. And if so, go back to your organization and start looking for opportunities. Negotiate some kind of upside model and start your journey as a corporate entrepreneur today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephan. For all the participants, I think we're eager to get your questions in, so you are able to use the chat if you want to just mention your name, or if you want to just let me know that you have a question. I'd be happy to pick from the hands raised or whatever function. So there is a couple of questions, I think, below. Oh, sorry, that's from Lynn. Sorry about that. So I think they were sent in advance. So here we are. We'll go, yeah, sorry about that. So we'll just start off with the first one here, which is during your early stages of starting a business, do you wish you didn't penny pinch on anything that could have helped maybe push earlier growth?
Yeah, so I think, that's the advantage of a corporate entrepreneurship model, is that you don't have a limited budget. Your budget can be significantly larger, which allows this ability to scale and start much faster than if you were starting from scratch and kind of penny pinching and trying to get through the early days of a startup. And so this corporate entrepreneurship model allows you to skip through those hard early days. I always think that it is important, and we work with a lot of entrepreneurs, to squeeze a little bit. If there's too much capital in the early stages, we often see this with serial entrepreneurs. Their first venture, they were constrained with cash, which made them be very innovative with the money that they had, and they had to take, very creative in the way that they got started. And then when they go to do their second venture, they want the latte machine, and they start at a much, they want to skip those hard, painful days. But often that constrains some of the creativity and ability to be, to think quick and stretch resources further. So I think there's a balance between being starved a little bit or overly starved.
And maybe I'll ask one as well is, in listening to your presentation, you gave some great tips on how to start, that change of mentality into a bit more of an entrepreneur-like mentality, but also, basically your 3 steps. But I guess my question is, once you have this idea of, I know the problem that I want to solve or the service that I want to provide to clients, where do you start? Now that you've got those 3 steps kind of started, where do you go next?
Yeah, so I think in the context of you've identified some kind of need within your organization, and you're thinking about, how do I propose this? I think it always comes with a great plan, and proposing some kind of, hey, look, I think I can do this, but for doing this and taking some of the sacrifice and some of the risk, and that's why, if you want upside, you need to accept some of the downside risk as well. No one's just going to give you more, and so it's thinking about what can you propose to the existing management team or shareholders or whoever you may be working for as an employee, and convincing them that need that they're looking to solve, that you can solve it, and you're willing to share in some of the risk in trying to solve that problem. And so maybe it is accepting a salary cut, maybe it's accepting the pain of moving to a different city and starting all over. There's got to be some downside risk that shows to the other side that you're committed and willing to take some of that upside. And so it's about exploring and thinking more like an entrepreneur, proposing that as an option, and seeing where it goes from there.
No, makes sense. Absolutely. Even I'm just thinking, even right now, that what you just mentioned about even having to move might be the first step, right, to getting the ball rolling, getting some of that traction. Thank you. So we have a question from Peter here, and he says, "Thanks for the presentation, Stephan. May I ask what the time at the family office has taught you?"
Yeah, that's a good question. So family offices are unique places of work. For those that don't know what a family office is, it's typically wealthy individuals that they're busy being rich, and so they've got lots of complications in their lives, lots of investments, lots of stuff that they are trying to manage. And so the term family office can range significantly to some very sophisticated and unsophisticated groups that require the assistance of professional management in order to manage their assets or their lives or whatever the case may be. But like any family, there's always all sorts of dynamics and personalities that kind of get mixed into it. And so working for wealthy individuals that can change on a dime and have strong views and have been successful, really forces you to be an orchestrator of diplomacy and trying to achieve sometimes goals that they don't even know what they're trying to achieve. And so my time there was definitely, it was always meant to be a short-lived stint. Good friends of mine, they had a lot of complication in their lives that needed some sorting. And so we just put some order back into some of the assets that they had, in order to kind of get them back on track. So it's a very interesting and dynamic work environment. And right now there's actually a growth in family office, and it really started during COVID. Lots of people have made a lot of money during COVID. So there's been great wealth accumulation. And with the change of real estate and and businesses and all the market fluctuations, wealthy individuals are rethinking how they look and deploy their capital. And so for those that, in the past might have just simply bought real estate, commercial and the likes, and invested maybe in the public markets, have rethought, where should I be putting my money now? And so we saw an extreme growth in family office being set up during COVID last year, particularly, and pivoting towards private company ownership. So looking to deploy capital in private companies as a hedge against other asset classes where they feel that there's a little too much volatility. And so if it's a place where you're interested in working, family office can be a great place where you can touch on so many different, but it of course depends on each family.
Thank you. And you mentioned the term hedge a few times. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, so hedging is is an ability to limit either up and downside. So you can hear the word is hedge funds, which is from on a financial perspective, they're hedging their downside risk by using financial instruments. But you can use hedges in your own life. An example would be being a renter. A renter is a hedge against rising costs of a home ownership. You have an option to decide if you want to no longer pay rent and move. You're not stuck with an asset. And so you can use this concept of hedging in all aspects of your life, and make yourself more anti-fragile in terms of your life and what potentially might happen should an event like COVID happen. And so, a hedge is just kind of protecting the downside. Unfortunately, as I mentioned in the presentation, it also limits upside. You may not get the full benefit of upside, but you're kind of neutral, and you should also not be as affected on the downside.
This is where the whole hedge your bets comes in as well, that little expression, for sure. No, it makes sense. We have another question that was sent in advance here, and it says, how to start an advocacy for outdoor classrooms and also make it my primary source of income, though my goal is not to become rich, but to be able to earn about 30 to 50,000 a year. So I can do this work without having to work on a survivor job and do this merely as a passion or hobby.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of side hustles and entrepreneurship to be more than just, what we see in kind of Forbes magazines and articles, and, kind of everybody having this dream of becoming the next billionaire. I think Canada needs it. There's lots of entrepreneurs over the last 30, 40 years that have done really, really well. We see it every day that, we work with entrepreneurs and help them get that eventual exit. And some of them have converted from these small side hustles and part-time in a way, particularly in the 80s when it was really hard to make extra income. We were in a recession, and they were ways to kind of, to bring in more income in their family. And they've over time grown. Sure, they've never been these front page, news stories, but they're very good businesses that have resulted in very good outcomes for those entrepreneurs. And so I think entrepreneurship is much broader than just using it in, what most think of it as being an entrepreneur, kind of on a Fortune front page. And I think it can be used as, you can be you use entrepreneurship in volunteering, creating a not-for-profit. You can do it as a small business. I think it's for everybody in the various, and like I mentioned today, you can do it through corporate entrepreneurship as well. So even if you're working in a large organization and it feels like that this isn't entrepreneurial, I think there's ways to leverage the mindset and create a more impactful and meaningful experience in your career.
Absolutely. It's funny. You touched on a point that maybe I was quite interested to ask, and it's the, if you're a Telfer Executive MBA alumni, you will remember the talks that were had on economics and the importance of, government and government policy on how it impacts Canadian businesses and it impacts Canadian lives and all this stuff. But what can government be doing maybe more to enable some of these entrepreneurs or to enable some of these ideas and some of these things to come to more of a fruition, would you say?
Yeah, so I actually, Canada's, despite lots, Canada does a very good job. Most of our deals are cross-border, so we work with a lot of American firms and private equity firms on the US side, and they are floored by the support that our government provides to particularly medium to small businesses. In the US, there's lots of programs for very, very large, the Boeings of the world and some of the large enterprises. But in Canada, with a combination of BDC, EDC, and some of the tax incentives that we have, even during the pandemic, we talked to a lot of private equity firms that have, of course, portfolio companies both in the US and in Canada. And they were just shocked by the wage subsidies and some of the stuff that were completely unavailable to them in the US, but was available to them in Canada. And so, Canada, of course, can always do more. I think it starts very at a young age, promoting entrepreneurship and thinking about entrepreneurship in the high schools and universities. I think Telfer, particularly, I'm working on a few as an advisor in a few different programs where they are planning on expanding that and leveraging technologies that we've got kind of percolating within the research departments and how to commercialize it and get it started. There still seems to be, unfortunately, in Canada, due to size, there is less capital, and so that's probably one area where Canada can try to solve a few of the gaps in terms of getting financing and capital out to particularly in the early stage of early stage companies, but also at the later stage. There are a lot of companies that we end up unfortunately having to sell to Americans because they run out of gas, and the Americans come up and acquire and take a lot of the good technology and good companies that were built in Canada and bring it into the US market. And Canada has a hard time bridging that. But that being said, I got to give where credit's due. Canada has some great entrepreneurs, particularly in Ottawa, with some super companies that nobody talks about. They're often in the background, doing really, really good things. And I can even share a couple companies in Ottawa that people don't even know that they were here.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you have any examples? That'd be great to hear about them.
Yeah. Can anybody guess what was the #1 product that was sold on Amazon? And it is based here in Ottawa.
In Ottawa, wow. Geez.
This is in the world, not just.
I don't know, but I'm already excited to find out. So I see some nodding too. Sorry.
The Instapot.
No way.
Instapot is an Ottawa-based company.
What? My father's going to be very happy to hear that one. He's a fan.
Yeah, and we have these countless examples of companies that people don't recognize that were developed here in Ottawa and or in Canada, and the products we use every day. And so, unfortunately, just like Instapot, it was sold to an American company, and so that's where I think we can do better is helping those companies stay in Canada much longer and take on world domination.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, yeah, it feels almost like a loss, right? Like, oh, we had one, and now it's like, but we lost them. So there seems to be a lot of work still to do, like on the public side, to try and encourage a more longer term or maybe more value or more attractiveness to stay within Canada. But I think it's a tricky thing. Anyways, but thank you for those comments. A couple of extra questions coming in now. You talked about being a corporate entrepreneur in the public sector and you didn't benefit financially. Can you talk about the benefits of being a corporate entrepreneur in the public service and or in a unionized environment?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, I mean, in the public sector, of course, it's hard to be remunerated financially. But I think, in my example of that green initiative that I did, it brought me into all sorts of opportunities within the department. Had I wanted to stay, and for me, there was kind of an earning to be out in kind of the private sector. But if I had decided to stay, I would have continued this corporate entrepreneurship, looking for, particularly in the public sector, where I worked on with some great, smart individuals. We had a lot of work, and it was hard to do and take on extra work. But it's very meaningful if you can and work with some on special projects and kind of create a little bit more of interest within your job, particularly if you feel like you're stuck, you're at a PS level or whatever the AS, and I can't remember all the different levels anymore. But, and you feel like you can't go up because there's no movement. I found that by creating kind of an entrepreneurial spirit within the public sector, and when I did that green initiative, it had nothing to do with our department. It had nothing to do even with our group. It was just something that I decided to take on and work through and really try to reduce waste at the time. And it kind of took off, and people appreciate that, and it gave me kind of a meaning for coming into work. Of course, you have to have the support of management, and but if you think about it, who doesn't support somebody that wants to do something, go beyond what their day-to-day is? It's pretty easy to get buy-in.
Absolutely. And it actually reminds me of a story. I had read an article about a company coming together with the Chateau Laurier to create these beehives, to leverage the property of the Chateau Laurier, or how was it? I can't remember. Something about putting these beehives into place, and the Chateau Laurier helped by purchasing the honey to use in their food production. And so there was this partnership that just kind of dawned out of someone leveraging the little bit of green space in the city and in the National Capital Region, and connecting with a company who was willing to partner, and them just making this kind of amazing solution. So it reminds me of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's a couple of comments here, and I thought Peter put a couple of just some fun facts in the chat, and I thought I'd just raise one particular, which I think was interesting. It says since 2014, by the way, these are ENT facts from a BDC report, and he's just pasted them here for us. So since 2014, entrepreneurial activity has increased by 80% for Canadians under 35 years old. And that brought me to the next question, which was, are you seeing any trends in terms of age groups? Is it all over, or what do you think?
Yeah, so I think absolutely entrepreneurship, and it's similar to kind of those last periods of the last couple of decades where millennials are having a hard time moving up. There was they're entrants, particularly the ones that are kind of in their 20s, and they feel that there's not a whole lot of room in mobility. People are holding on to their jobs a little bit longer, so the retirement ages are kind of getting stretched out. That the baby boomer that we thought we were all going to leave, and it's kind of stretching out a little bit longer and longer. And so I think we're seeing these side hustles and these various millennials looking at setting up businesses, and sometimes it just starts off as something on the side. And we've seen that particularly in Shopify. There's lots of small shops that were set up on another Canadian Ottawa-based company, that start up in kind of a small project selling whatever, and then have grown and pulled them away from whatever jobs they were currently in. So we have seen an absolute rise in entrepreneurship. Unfortunately, the stats are still the same. There's many that won't make it to the fifth year. They tend to die off, and so we'll see how many get culled all the way to the end. But I am very hopeful for Canada. We do have there's a lot of stuff going on, in particular in Ottawa. Like it is not the same city that it was 10 years ago. There is big companies like Shopify. You see that success, and from that spawns off lots of other companies that are successful and people that leave and learn. And so we need those bigger companies and those success stories in order to foster and create more. If you think back in the early 2000s with the telecom boom, then Newbridge and Nortel, there's so many companies in Ottawa that still have their roots from individuals that worked there, saw an opportunity, and decided to leave and create and capitalize on that opportunity. So
absolutely. Okay, so with that question is another one inspired by with some of Peter's fun facts that he put in here, but it says about 28% of entrepreneurs are women, up from only 11% compared to 40 years ago. And so my next natural question is, as a woman, are we in a good spot to maybe go off and become entrepreneurs? Like, what's the female angle for this?
Yeah, I think there's never been a better time than being, a female in entrepreneurship. There are more and more programs. So if you don't know, BDC's got a program. EDC is a top priority for the Liberal government, and they've been putting a lot of money in trying to promote. There's all sorts of BC specific funds that only invest in, and now we're starting to see. Last year there was a launch that Case Depot did one for this is later stage of private equity. And they've got this this push to being kind of well represented at the board level, at the management level, at kind of all the governance level, and so really pushing towards. And I think the world needs there's an equal balance between men and women, and we need that representation. And there's so many good success stories of women that have seen opportunities that men would have never seen, and so that's great, for promoting entrepreneurship and contributing to the economy and creating a more diversity and think and opportunity. So yeah, it's a good time.
It's a good time for all, I guess. That's good, but good for women too. Great. In terms of maybe a more universal question is, again, we're back to, the 3 steps that we need to do. We have our idea clear in mind. We're going to start, thinking about how to make an impact, even just where we're starting. Is there any maybe recommended readings or training that you think, maybe people should recommend it to brush up on, or be good to just have a base of the following?
Yeah. In terms, so I mean, the Telfer programs, of course, do a really good job in the MBA and the MBA. So if you've gone through that program and you're dusting off some of those books and kind of sometimes rereading an old book and looking at, I've lately through COVID, I've been reading a lot of really ancient books, like stuff that's been around forever, just to try to. And what's old becomes new again, and so when you see it with a fresh lens and different circumstances, and you can pull nuggets out of kind of that past. And so I think I'd encourage to read a lot of history, and whether it's on economics, life, philosophy, whatever the case may be, you can pull a lot of kind of good out of that, and then apply it to whatever situation. The situation always changes a little bit today, but people have already gone through it. And so, leverage resources available for sure.
Absolutely. This reminds me again, all the lessons are coming back. They must have done a good job, because I kept a lot of these lessons from school, and it was around management preference, right? That maybe in reading some of these various different topics, whether they're business related or not, just gives you a better sense of your own management preferences, of how you want to run your business, or how you want to approach a particular problem or challenge or client or group or whatever. So I think that's what I'm getting from your recommendation.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. All right, so we'll open it up to see if there's anyone who wants to do any, if you prefer not to do or are not able to do comments via questions, we do have a couple of extra minutes left here. However, before we get to that, I just want to remind people that there is an opportunity. Some people have already posted their LinkedIn profiles in the chat. It's a great time to connect with people of similar ideas and similar minds. So if you haven't had a chance to do so, please feel free to add your LinkedIn profile into the chat as well. All righty. All right. Well, any last, maybe just before, let me just do a quick time check here. We have about 9 solid minutes left, so we do have a chance for a couple of extra questions. And mine was going to be maybe around, once you've actually hit the ground, now you've started, now you're starting to kind of solidify your idea. Now it's starting to take some sort of shape and whatnot. Do you get clients coming back with requests for help or guidance? And what are some predominant topics that tend to come up?
Yeah, I mean, like in the early days, I think that a lot of the companies that are trying to form those ideas, the best resources available are incubators or accelerators. In Ottawa, we've got Invest Ottawa, so those are looking for kind of a platform where they can go, and there's tons of resources there, from everything from setting up on the legal side, accounting, to just how do you flush out your business plan and model. And I think that one of the things that I see that entrepreneurs sometimes miss the mark is just because there's a problem doesn't mean that there's a business. And it's really being able to tie the problem you're trying to solve with a business model that will work. And so we have lots of problems that we'd love solved, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's an opportunity there. And so spending that upfront time, really flushing out the business model and where you're going to extract the most value. I really suggest using things like the business canvas map. You can, it's a quick visual that shows kind of the value proposition that you're trying to solve, and you can brainstorm and use sticky notes and really try to identify what is it that you're trying to solve, how are you going to get paid for it, and really thinking through the entire business model.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Interesting. So it's funny, you talked when you were talking about, how we have now Shopify and really the West End part of the city. And I assume that this would be almost the same for other cities. They might have areas that are maybe just more prone to these types of businesses. And for Ottawa, it's the West End. But does that leave an opportunity for the South End of Ottawa or the East End of Ottawa? Like, what does that, like in terms, they think like location is so important, or, if you're going to have a brick and mortar, location is important. Does that, how do we take that into account?
Yeah, I think, I think as urban planners, we really do need to start thinking about it as, this work and live and play within your community. This idea of and I think COVID has really helped with this, pushing us back into our homes, and we're not centrally driving in and out. I live in Canada North and coming all the way downtown, and so I really want to celebrate. We have some great villages in Ottawa. There's Carp, and there's Almont, and all the Richmond, and all these various villages that can create a little bit more sustainability, and we can bring businesses there, and they can live in this community, they can work there. So I really hope that post-COVID we rethink how we work, the areas, and I hope the urban planners really think about that when they're designing the city, and really thinking about how we can maximize. And that's good for the environment, that's good for business, that's good for everybody. And so, I think we really need to do some work on that, and hopefully COVID pushes it over.
Excellent. Excellent. No, that's great. So opportunities abound. I think that's about all the time that we have. So just want to take an extra second to thank all the participants for joining us here during lunchtime. Stephan, thank you so much for a great presentation, engagement discussion. And yeah, there's a lot of thank yous coming in from different folks here on the chat for you, Stephan. So thank you again. And with that, I think we're able to wrap it up just in time for our 1 o'clock meeting. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, and connect with me on LinkedIn if you.
Super. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. Bonne journée.
Cheers.